Some mistakes do not just burn money, they rewrite industries and leave bodies, lawsuits, and abandoned terminals behind. These are the billion-dollar decisions that looked brilliant right up until the alarm started failing. The strangest part is how often the warning was already there, but hidden in plain sight. Quibi shut down. By October 21, 2020, Quibi was already calling time on a service that had launched that April. That is the collapse, then comes the bill. $1.75 billion raised by Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman. You would think names like that would stress test the premise. Instead, their reputations made it feel obvious. Hollywood polish plus executive discipline, squeezed into quick bites for phones. The trap was clean enough to sign off on. Charge about $5 a month with ads or $8 without, and assume commuters would pay for premium fragments. Then everyone stopped commuting. Stuck at home, viewers had couches, televisions, and full-length streaming. Quibi built for spare moments, then discovered there were none to own. Samsung Galaxy Note7 recall. At the airport gate, Samsung's flagship was no longer just a phone. It was the thing they were warning you not to bring on board. The Galaxy Note7 launched in August 2016 as Samsung's premium answer to the iPhone. Thin, powerful, and priced like confidence. Then the battery math came due. Compressed cell geometry and manufacturing defects helped create dendrite growth, and some phones overheated, smoked, or caught fire. The first recall covered 2.5 million units. Samsung's fix was to swap the dangerous phone for a different dangerous phone. On October 10th, 2016, it stopped production, sales, and exchanges. On October 13th, the recall covered originals and replacements. Cost hit $5.3 billion. Samsung had to prove its next phone belonged in your pocket. Yahoo rejects Microsoft's takeover bid. The same trap shows up again, only this time the product is the whole company. On February 1st, 2008, Microsoft offered $44.6 billion in cash and stock to buy Yahoo outright. You would think $44 billion buys a little boardroom caution. 10 days later, Yahoo said no, calling the offer too low. Microsoft kept pushing, later saying it raised the bid by roughly $5 billion before walking away on May 3rd. Then the market did the audit. Yahoo turned down $44.6 billion, and 9 years later, its core internet business sold to Verizon for about $4.48 billion. That is not patience, that is a premium left on the table. Next comes the merger logic that made Yes even more expensive. Microsoft's Nokia phone write-off. In September 2013, Microsoft announced a $7.2 billion bet on Nokia's devices and services business, closing it on April 25, 2014. The plan: use Nokia's Lumia hardware to force Windows Phone into a market already sealed by iPhone and Android. You can see the trap. Nokia had the phones. Microsoft had the tiles. What they did not have was the app ecosystem people actually bought into. On July 8, 2015, just over a year later, Microsoft announced a $7.6 billion impairment charge and 7,800 layoffs. $7.2 billion in, $7.6 billion written off. They paid to lose money. Nadella did not just inherit a phone business, he inherited the receipt. HP Autonomy acquisition write-down. Mike Lynch sold HP the promise of autonomy, and worse than inheriting a bad receipt, HP had to tell investors the receipt itself might be fiction. In 2011, HP bought the British software company for roughly $11 billion, aiming to turn its business toward higher-margin enterprise software. Then the deal closed, the glow faded, and HP alleged serious accounting improprieties. On November 20th, 2012, HP announced an $8.8 billion write-down tied to the acquisition, a goodwill impairment so large it turned boardroom optimism into courtroom vocabulary. A United States court filing later summarized the acquisition and the write-down in brutal arithmetic. HP thought it had bought growth. It got a public argument over whether the value was ever there, and the next deal makes that look almost disciplined. AOL Time Warner merger. You can hear the dial-up screech under the applause. On January 10, 2000, AOL and Time Warner announced a $165 billion stock swap, the largest merger in United States history at the time. It closed in January 2001, just as the dot-com fantasy was running out of road. The pitch was clean enough for a boardroom slide. AOL's internet audience, plus Time Warner's cable, magazines, film, and television, would unlock cross-platform ads and reach 100 million subscribers. You can see the trap. AOL paid with inflated tech stock to buy old media right before that stock collapsed. By 2002, the combined company had lost about 80% of its market value. Then came the $54 billion write-down and a $99 billion annual loss. Synergy had met arithmetic. Denver International Airport Baggage System. At Denver's first public baggage test, the future did not glide in. It tore bags open, crushed them, threw them off carts, and jammed conveyors where everyone could watch. This was the system Denver had promised itself, built by BAE Automated Systems, thousands of carts racing through miles of track, guided by optical scanners, high-speed switches, and automated loading equipment. It was supposed to replace tug and cart baggage handling and help open the airport in October 1993. The airport opened February 28, 1995, about 16 months late. The direct cost was roughly $560 million. You can see the trap. United kept a partial version running until 2005, then abandoned it. Denver automated the problem, then paid to make it conventional again. Berlin Brandenburg Airport fire safety failure. June 3, 2012 was the moment Berlin learned an airport can fail before the first boarding call. BER, built in Schönefeld as the capital's new airport after construction began in 2006, was days from opening when the fire protection and smoke extraction system still could not do its basic job. You can see the trap. The terminal was being readied, the launch machine was moving, and the safety system was the part you cannot wave through with optimism. Then the defects kept surfacing, faulty cabling, incorrectly installed fire doors, escalators, and signs that did not match the building they were supposed to guide. Rainer Schwartz was dismissed in 2013. Costs climbed from about 2 billion euros to roughly 6 to 7 billion euros. BER finally opened on October 31, 2020, into a COVID travel collapse. A grand entrance with almost no audience. NSA Trailblazer project. After an airport that could not pass its own safety checks, the next failure has a security clearance. In the late 1990s, Trailblazer was pitched inside the National Security Agency as a contractor-built system to filter and analyze huge volumes of digital traffic. And after September 11, 2001, General Michael Hayden pushed it harder, with Science Applications International Corporation, or SAIC, at the center. You would think that would buy certainty. Instead, William Binney, J. Kirk Wiebe, Ed Loomis, Diane Rourke, and Thomas Drake said the NSA passed over ThinThread, an internal prototype that was cheaper and encrypted United States person data. Trailblazer was shut down around 2006 after costs climbed past $1.2 billion. The lesson is simple. Secret failure still fails. It just bills later. Volkswagen diesel defeat devices. If hidden failure only bills later, what happens when the product itself knows how to behave differently under inspection? In September 2015, Volkswagen's diesel emissions scandal became public after regulators found engine control software in diesel cars that detected test conditions and cut nitrogen oxide emissions on the rollers. On the road, those same vehicles emitted far more NOx, which turned a clean diesel marketing pitch into a compliance trap with a steering wheel. The affected cars included United States 2.0-liter and 3.0-liter TDI diesels, and roughly 11 million vehicles worldwide were implicated. Volkswagen recorded 22.6 billion euros in special diesel-related items for 2015 and 2016, while United States penalties hit $4.3 billion plus $2.7 billion for environmental mitigation and $2 billion for zero-emission vehicle investments. Public reporting put the total cost above 30 billion euros. This was not a test Volkswagen failed. It was a test Volkswagen tried to outsmart, and the next disaster shows what happens when software logic moves from scandal to safety. Boeing 737 MAX MCAS disaster. Dennis Muhlenberg faced Congress while 737 MAX jets sat parked nose to tail. The system at the center was MCAS, software that could force the nose down from one bad angle of attack reading. After Volkswagen, you had seen software used to hide emissions from regulators. Boeing went further. It kept a flight control system functionally invisible to many of the pilots expected to survive it. Lion Air Flight 610 crashed on October 29, 2018. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed on March 10, 2019. 346 people died. The global grounding began that March and lasted about 20 months until FAA recertification in November 2020. Boeing's bill crossed $20 billion. The sales pitch was no simulator time required. That was the trap. BP Deepwater Horizon blowout. The Deepwater Horizon disaster did not need a metaphor. On April 20th, 2010, BP's Macondo well failed about 41 miles off Louisiana, and the rig above it burned through the night before sinking into the Gulf. 11 workers lost their lives. The ugly part is how readable the danger was. A negative pressure test gave warning signs, but the job kept moving because delay offshore burns money fast, and bad assumptions are cheaper until they erupt. Then crude surged from a broken underwater riser for weeks. Roughly 4.9 million barrels entered the Gulf, darkening water, coastlines, and BP's balance sheet. Cleanup, charges, penalties, and settlements topped $65 billion. That is what optimism costs when the well is already talking.